Okay, hello again. In this video, I'm going to attempt to run through the basics of FM synthesis as I've come to understand it. So I guess at its most basic, FM synthesis is the combination of two oscillators, although there can be more than two, but that's the most basic is two oscillators, one called the modulator and the other one's the carrier. Now, unlike subtractive synthesis that uses filters to control tone, FM synthesis builds the sounds from scratch using modulation to control the tone. Now, Ableton Live has its own FM synthesis capable instrument called Operator. So I'm going to load that up onto a MIDI channel and just show the basics of how FM synthesis works using Operator. Okay, so I'm just going to drag this out. Now, in our instrument section here, then I'm going to double click on Operator, and then I'll put Operator into one of our MIDI channels. Okay, so on the side here are our four oscillators, and as I said earlier, at its most basic it sort of uses two, but you can have any Operator allows you to have up to four oscillators at any one time. This bottom one here is the carrier, which is where our I guess it's the final release of our sound. So you're not actually hearing these sort of modulation oscillators here, but they do affect the tone of what comes out of our carrier signal here. The way we're working here, these coloured squares down the bottom here sort of give us a rundown on how our oscillators are going to cascade with each other. So at the moment, this is a sort of linear arrangement, which is sort of the traditional FM synthesis setup. So as you can see here, starting from here, this top one here affects this one, which then affects this one, which then the combination of those affects our carrier, and that's what we're hearing at the end. So I'm just going to work with two for now, just so you can get the basic idea. I'm going to switch these other two off. Now, at the moment, I've got our carrier signal set to a sine wave, which is just that sort of pure sine tone. All right, and the way FM synthesis works is when you combine this carrier signal with a modulator, so we'll click on that one. I might go up and change the wave just to maybe a saw wave. Okay, so obviously you can see there, this is our fundamental, this tallest peak here is our fundamental, and these are all the harmonics that the saw wave adds on. Now these get fed into our carrier signal, our sine tone signal, which is still, we haven't got any level up yet, but once we start to increase our level on our modulator, you can see how those harmonics are affecting our carrier signal. All right, so that's how we control the tone. Over here on our coarse button here, what this does is this sort of increases the whole number ratio, increase or decrease the whole number ratio between our two oscillators, which means it adds harmonics as we just play it, we'll increase that as we go. So it increases, changes the types of harmonics we're getting. These are all still harmonics. Okay, and then this fine button here, what this does is it's a bit like detuning, I guess. So once we adjust this, it starts to add in harmonics to our sound, which is, can be used for creating more percussive elements such as cymbals, that kind of bells, that kind of thing, that don't have they have a more of a broad harmonic spectrum, I guess, and inharmonic as well. It's not just isolated to harmonics. So if you hear what we're adding there, and as we start adding this, we start to get a more of a discordant sound. can also have access to our envelopes for both our carrier and our oscillators, which obviously, if you with fast attacks, that kind of thing, you can use to create your percussive instruments, and then adding in your sort of inharmonic frequencies. You can also create, nice pads, that kind of thing, by just, smoothing out that attack a little bit and maybe moving release. Such. Let me push that level up a bit. See how just adjusting that level sort of adds in that. Gives us that almost an organ sound. So there's lots of things you can do, especially when combining more than just the two oscillators. I haven't spent a lot of time exploring the full functionality. I'm only at a basic level, but that's pretty much how they work. It's the combination of what's going on this modulator oscillator, which then affects the tone of your carrier signal. So with just through a little bit of exploration with your various types of waves and that kind of thing, you can learn to sort of create anything from nice soft pads to heavy percussive and distorted instruments. At the start it seems quite convoluted and sort of hard to get your head around, but it just takes a little bit of experimenting and messing around with sounds to get a handle on it. And another thing the operator allows us to do as well is to actually manually draw in harmonic frequencies using this draw function here. So you can just sort of go in and just add in random harmonics at sort of any velocity. And really shape the sound how you see fit, really. Okay, so that's a basic outline of how FM synthesis works. I haven't had a lot of time to explore the full functionality of Operator, but the basics are you have your modulation, anywhere from 1 to Operator gives you up to 3 modulators, and then you have your carrier signal, which is sort of the final point. All these are leading up to the sound that we're getting out of this carrier signal. So that's the basics. I've found it's one of those things that it just takes some experimenting. The theory can be a little hard to get your head around, but with a bit of time, just getting to know this instrument a little bit, you can create some quite interesting sounds. All right, thanks.